Hi. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties, but that is the fun times of streaming. So I will be going back and forth. Please excuse me if it looks like we're going back and forth a little bit, trying to figure out exactly how to make this work. My name is Aldo. I am the editor of Quench magazine, and this is a new series that we're doing called Quench Live, in which we're talking to our editors, writers, as well as winemakers, people around the hospitality industry, in order to really find out what's happening not only in their town, but what's happening in and around their industry. Today, I'm going to talk to our creative director, Elvis Deane, who has been working with us for over 10 years now and been working mostly on the visual side. And I'd like to actually thank him for helping us set this up, because I think without him, I wouldn't have been able to do this at all. So here we go. I'll switch you to Elvis. Elvis, hello.
Hi, how are you? Yeah, you want to make sure you turn down the feed. The, mhm. Oh, great. This isn't much different than my normal life, being at home all the time. The only time I leave the house is usually to go do a shoot or something, and there's no shoots to do, so I'm just at home in front of a computer just as normal, so life's great.
Here at Quench. You've helped us set up this live streaming setup, essentially. And where do you see the streaming stuff coming in over the next couple of months, especially as media companies like ours try and figure out exactly how to stay current?
Changing, whereas everybody jumped on the Zoom bandwagon very quickly, and now I guess as more stories are coming out about their security issues, people are slowly backing away and looking at other options. And there are many options. If you are somebody that's looking for any kind of streaming, look at other ways to do it. This system that we're using, Lightstream, is one way to do it, and it's a very simple, easy way to do it. I think it also gives you a lot of options in a way that you don't generally get with something like Zoom, where things are being switched automatically. And it's nice to have some sort of creative control over the output that you're doing versus some of the automated systems that exist like Zoom.
Going to do is going to do some fancy little graphics here and there, and then also we'll work a little bit on our other graphics that we have set up. One of today we're going to be talking a little bit more about what you're doing in the kitchen, because I find it really interesting. You're a vegetarian, and so that is not as easy to do these days, simply because from what I've seen, availability of certain ingredients are missing. We're still seeing a lot of vegetables, but I'm missing things like nutritional yeast and all those other little fun things that vegetarians use. Are you seeing a difference when you're going to the grocery store? Are you finding it more difficult to find things?
And I don't know if that's because we had a lot of the things like nutritional yeast. We had a giant bucket of it right away. I had a bunch of pea protein and textured vegetable protein squirreled away. Actually, I did. I think the day before, the day after the NBA announced they were closing, I ran to Bulk Barn and I stocked up on TVP. I got like a kilogram of it because it's great protein that is super cheap. It's so ridiculously cheap, and it's also it grows essentially once you put it in a sauce or something. And so 1 kilogram ends up being looking like a lot more once you add it into your meals. In general, all our vegetable stores here, I live in Toronto on Bloor Street, and there's a lot of little fruit markets and stuff like that. And those are all open and they're fully stocked, so it's easy to get some of that stuff. Canned goods were kind of a thing. So if you're like me and you like to use a lot of canned beans rather than, say, taking chickpeas or lentils and getting them to putting them in water and soaking them, Beans maybe a little bit harder. I think we had quite a bit saved up. I keep looking up there because I have on top of our cupboards. We just had so many canned goods at the start of this that we just had to sort of lay them out on top of our cupboards, so we had space in our cupboards for other things. But I think it's let me this whole thing has just put me in the kitchen a lot more, and just because we're home all the time and you gotta eat, and you can't really. I mean, I live in an area where there are lots of takeout restaurants, but I've had a few issues when I've gone into places where people don't seem to respect the six feet kind of thing, and so I've just tried to avoid restaurants altogether or takeout places. So it's been a lot of cooking. Something we don't have in the house. Like I've run out of the tomato sauce that I use as the base for all my pasta dishes, so I'm experimenting with a lot of Italian herbs from Bulk Barn because those were easy to get, and just using crushed tomatoes. And crushed tomatoes end up tasting better anyway. So there you go.
Yeah, I end up using mostly canned whole tomatoes, and then just as they cook, they kind of break apart, and they have that perfect consistency without all the water that a lot of the kind of brought up sauces are have. So I actually end up doing quite a bit of that. I actually wanted to talk to you about something else. Let me find your audio source because it's not there. There we go. I wanted to talk to you about something else too. I know that one of the reasons why you've become vegetarian recently is because you have a new dog, and you love your dog so much that you don't want to eat any other animal. But one of the things that I find fascinating is that you actually spend a lot of time fostering other dogs. And so I just wanted to talk to you about what it's like now, getting into the fostering system and why you chose to do that in the first place.
I think it just started as a way. My partner's just always been someone who is really into the idea of fostering. She fostered a cat when we first met, who was a lot of trouble, and she's fostered animals before that. And we ended up fostering this dog from the Humane Society in Toronto. That was in the middle of a big court case. It was a hoarding case. I think there were 37 animals at this person's property, so they're all taken away while the court case was going on. And so we had this dog that was supposed to be for a 3 month period, but the court case kept dragging on, and as they do. And 11 months later, we still had the dog, so we kept her. But it was also, I think, as we got her, we started to eat. I think it was those PETA ads in the subways saying why love one and eat the other actually started to wear on us after a while. And then when we've been out to farms and things on shoots or on vacations and met goats or cows or any other animal and just started thinking, well, these aren't that much different from our dogs, so how can we eat one and love the other? It just became like a strange thing that happened. I was a huge meat eater before all this, so it's been a very big change over the last year or so. But I'm not finding that many limits. Like I'm eating well. There are times where I miss certain things, and I've got a couple of places I could talk about that have been very helpful for certain flavors that I've been missing in my life since going vegetarian. Because growing up in Montreal, I was in love with a lot of food that's Montreal specific, like Montreal smoked meat, and it's been so hard to give up sort of that flavor. Oh, there's the dog.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, so these are the pictures you use to exploit your dogs.
Yeah, this is Coco. We had him for about 3 months. We just gave him back on Saturday. If a lot of actually shelters are running out of pets, I think, because during this time people are home. They want some companionship, and I believe the shelter that we get our dogs from has run out of pets. But it's springtime, so there's always, I guess, new puppies and stuff coming in. Puppies are a bit of a harder prospect, I think, than uh, playing around with a fully grown dog, but it's still very rewarding. We've done, I think we've had about 8 dogs in the last 2 years, 7 dogs come through our house, and you fall in love with each and every one of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's that's I guess must be the most difficult thing for you to do is to actually give them away afterwards. I mean, you only have them for a short period of time, sometimes a little bit longer, but
Mhm.
you were able to adopt one dog, Samantha, but the other dogs end up going back somewhere else. Is it gut wrenching every time you have to drop them off?
Every time. That little dog Coco, he bit me a lot. He had some aggressive aggression problems, but it was hard to give him up because you fall in love with them. They become, especially 3 months is long enough for them to become part of your family and just part of your daily life. And then suddenly you stick them in a car and bring them off to a place, and it's always sad to see them go.
Yeah. Actually, one of the other things, as we get back to the cooking part, was you last week you were telling me that you started making a starter yeast. I mean, are
Mhm.
you making it in order to make bread, or are you going to make something else? What do you think?
Uh, I miss bread. I was able to go to a deli across the street and get rye bread pretty much any time I wanted, and I can still do that, I guess. But there's a lineup of 8 people outside all the time, and it's a very small place. I think they only let 1 or 2 people in. So I've just decided, I'm going to try to go without bread as much as possible, unless I can make my own. But of course, yeast is hard to come by unless you try to grow it your own. I did start a yeast about 4 days ago. I don't know if it's working because I'll get bubbles on the surface of it. Here's my yeast, and it's just this one was just started with putting an equal amount by weight of water and flour and mixing it up, and every day feeding the same amount into it and stirring it. I think 3 times a day. It's not working for me at the moment. I think part of the key of all this is that you use spring water or a water that doesn't have chlorine or chloramine in it, because that causes issues with the whether the yeast grows or not. And one day I forgot to pour in some spring water. I used a spoonful of tap water, so that might have killed the whole process. But I'm hopeful. I think by tomorrow I should know for sure whether it's grown or not. If you don't want to wait 5 days to make bread, there's lots of flatbreads you can make with just baking powder, baking soda, which if you have some sort of bulk barn kind of place or a bulk food establishment, you could easily get that. I think actually in grocery stores you're seeing some amount of baking soda and baking powder. I made some pizza dough with baking powder last week and came out actually quite great. Made some flatbreads and naan bread with baking soda, and all those were pretty good. They're especially, I think, like a naan bread's quite easy to make. Even if you want to make a vegetarian one, you could instead of milk just swap in oat milk or something like that, and it's not too hard to make.
Yeah, I make an arepa. So I have a celiac. I have a gluten allergy, and so in order to make things easy, I make these Venezuelan breads that are just cooked corn, uh, cooked corn that's just ground down essentially, and water, and that's all
Mm-hmm.
it is. Water and salt, and it you just kind of pan fry them on both sides, make them into a little flat ball, and then just pan fry them, and they end up tasting great because you just stuff them full of whatever you have on hand. So there's a lot of things I think we can do that we kind of forget that we can do simply because of the convenience of going down to the store, but we no longer have that convenience. So there's little else we can do other than go on Google, figure out how to make bread, and then all of a sudden, I mean, what is it now for you to? Are you able to make the lasagna that you always want?
Yeah, actually, I made a lasagna yesterday, and I did take some shortcuts. Actually, one of the reasons I did make it was going back to what I was saying about missing flavors from my childhood. I found a couple of places that sell sort of vegan deli meats, and my whole thing with lasagna in Montreal was you would get pepperoni sort of on the top layer under the cheese, and so I had this great pepperoni from a place called Soup, Suup. It's a local Toronto small place that does a lot of um, fruit smoothie kind of things, but they also have started a deli meat line, and they essentially have salami, pastrami, charcuterie of all kinds. That's all vegan, plant based, and not so much. If you look at the ingredients of something like Beyond Meat, you'll see lots and lots of chemicals in there. Whereas when you look at the ingredients from some of the smaller butcher shops or vegan butcher shops and vegan establishments, they're not using so many horrible things. There's another place in Vancouver called the Very Good Butcher, which seems to make things out of a lot of mushrooms, oats, and natural sort of things. I think the only big chain that is doing that sort of thing is Field Roast, which makes lots of mushroom and oat based burgers and sausages, and it's a great way to be able to be vegetarian and still get those flavors that you might be missing from a burger, say a burger or a sausage or deli.
Yeah. So I mean that's pretty much it. I think we've covered everything I wanted to cover today on Quench Live. I wanted to thank you very much for helping us set this up. I think that now we'll be able to go out and see some of our writers and also be able to give you a kind of outline of what's happening in the food and drink industry over the next couple of months. And as we try and get back to some normalcy, we'll even maybe try and do some tastings as well as I don't know if I can get a cooking thing set up, but I'll maybe try and do something over the next couple of months. So, Elvis, thank you very much for helping us out here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. And say hi to Samantha and everyone else.
I will.
All right. So thank you very much for listening to Quench Live. If you can, please follow, like, and subscribe. And also take a look at our Facebook page over the next couple of weeks as we update you on the next the episodes coming up for Quench Live. Hopefully we'll get some of this kind of live stuff fixed. Although from what I hear from Elvis, this is what streaming is always about. A lot of mistakes and flubs, and then we still keep rolling. So hopefully we'll see you soon, and we'll see you on the pages of Quench. Bye.